This show is dedicated to helping visionaries build a life and business they're proud of. And no visionary is proud of being average. You want to be excellent, right? This is part 2 of our Allergic to Average episode, or duology. We established in part 1 that we as visionaries are allergic to average, and we want to pursue excellence in our lives and business. And we identified 5 things that could be making you average without you even realizing it. Super cool episode. If you haven't listened to it already, just go back one, and I suggest you start there. But what happens next? What if you have identified some average areas in your life or business? How do you fix them? How do you avoid average and maintain excellence in your life and business? Well, you know what's crazy? The answer might not be as hard as you think. You may have been making it harder than it really has to be. In fact, what I'm about to tell you, it made my life a lot more simple. You're listening to the Build Your Vision podcast, a podcast series about maneuvering the ups and downs of building a life that you're proud of, captured in real time. A community where dreamers become doers and doers become world changers. Let's go. Yo, what's up, guys? This is the Build Your Vision podcast, the #1 self-leadership podcast in the world for visionaries who are serious, not just curious about building a life and business they are proud of. I am Clee, the visionary, your self-leadership coach, and it is my mission to help you along the journey of becoming a visionpreneur, an individual who makes impact and income with their ideas, insights, and influence, because someone needs what you are building. So we're going to be super practical in this episode, guys. How do you maintain excellence and avoid average? Like literally, practically, how do we do that in our lives? So we already established in part 1 of this episode of Allergic to Average series that these are the 5 components or characteristics of creeping averageness, right? It's super subtle. You don't really realize when it's happening, but we were made aware of what they could be in the last episode. Those 5 things are indifference, ignorance or a lack of knowledge, inflexibility, miscommunication, and posing. And just to quickly recap, this is what those 5 things mean. Indifference means you aren't bothered either way about the outcome of something because you no longer are passionate about that thing. Ignorance, it means that you have felt that you either know it all or you don't know enough, right? It's the lack of or the misinterpretation of having or not having knowledge. Inflexibility means that you are not malleable in your approach to success. You are rigid. You have no margin in your life. You are trying to do something within a box that really needs to be thought of outside of the box. Miscommunication. That's pretty self-explanatory, but we talked about it from an internal and an external point of view. Are you miscommunicating with others? And are you even miscommunicating with yourself? And posing, this means that you are giving the impression of doing something that you really aren't accomplishing on the inside. And you know that, but you're putting on a facade that poses that you are so that other people don't know that about you. So how do you avoid this? Because I'm pretty sure all of us are guilty of one or all of these at some point in our life. So we're going to go through the breakdown right now, point blank. How do you avoid indifference? You avoid indifference by keeping the end in mind. I remember one time when I was at work, and I think I talked about this on Vision Coffee on my Instagram live series, where I was at work and we were suffering some type of problem, some type of technical issue. And I was going back with our tech guy and we were just approaching the issue. And I was like, why are we approaching the issue this way? And we were both kind of on the same page. We're like, this doesn't make sense of why we're trying to fix the problem in this type of manner. And his response really, really stuck with me. And it had no type of reflection on who he is as a person or his character. He's a brilliant person. Who is doing great things. But at this moment, in his frustration, he said this phrase that I think embodies indifference at its highest. He said, I don't know. I just work here. You might have said that at your job before, or you might have heard someone else say it. But at the moment, I completely understood what he's saying. But when you really think about it, he did not really have much stake in the outcome because he no longer felt like he had ownership over how it was being solved. This is when indifference can creep in, right? When you no longer see how the outcome affects your life or how the outcome is advantageous to what you were either consciously or subconsciously desiring for your life, you start to become indifferent. You're like, You start saying these type of phrases. It's okay. It will do. It doesn't have to be perfect. It'll get the job done. Stuff like that, right? Those are indifferent laden phrases. Those are not phrases of excellence. It's not necessarily your fault. That is inevitable if you have lost passion for what you are doing. How do you maintain passion for what you are doing? By understanding that the hard work that you are doing has an advantageous outcome for your life. I believe it was Simon Sinek. He said, and I might be messing this up, but hard work for an undesirable outcome is called stress. Hard work for a desirable outcome is called passion. And I think that is so true, right? I know for Kobe Bryant, he probably was just really passionate about basketball, waking up at 4 a.m, working out 3, 4, 5 times a day. For me, and I like basketball, I don't like it that much though. That's stress. But for him, it's passion. While for me, recording podcast episodes for 5 hours a day could be very highly stressful to somebody. But for me, I love to record podcasts. I love to share what I'm learning. It is passion. One thing that is near to this that I actually am not passionate about is editing podcasts. This is why I'm beginning to outsource this activity, especially when the podcast is not my own. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm very good at editing podcasts. I could do it in my sleep. It's why I even have a podcast editing agency. But I had to make adjustments in my business to shift the framework of how I was perceiving editing podcasts because I started to hear myself saying, it's okay. Or this edit is good enough. That is not excellence. What I had to do is start catering who I was editing podcasts for. I had to start editing shows that I was also very invested in because I knew that they were also making an impact, which is what I am most concerned about. So editing a show about Star Wars is not going to be the type of show that I want to edit because I could find myself becoming indifferent in the outcome. By keeping the end in mind of who I do want to serve, I'm able to make adjustments so that I do maintain excellence in my work because I'm making it hard work for a desirable outcome, not hard work for an undesirable outcome, which becomes stress. The way I keep the end in mind at the forefront of my mind at all times, and I talk about this a lot more, I believe, in my You Inc. series, which is in season 4 of the podcast. I actually read my obituary and my value ladder each day. Now, what is that, right? An obituary, well, of course, that's what happens. That's kind of like what's written in the program when you pass away. Now, I know that could sound morbid, but it's really, really not that serious because we all know that we're going to die eventually one day and we don't know when. That's just the reality, right? Let's stop avoiding it. Here's the sunshine and all of that. By me keeping the end in mind of what I once said when it's all said and done, I am way closer every single day to actually making that a reality because I remind myself of it. The thing about being human is that we have a very short memory. We forget really, really quickly what we have assigned to ourselves to do and the responsibilities we have put ourselves on. We sink back into old habits and rituals very, very quickly, and it's hard for us to change the outcomes of our lives because of it. By me literally keeping the end in mind every day, I'm able to align how I live my life daily with how I want my life to be remembered in the end. This is how I'm better able to differentiate stress and passion. I've already determined what really matters to me when it's all said and done. And if it does not align with that end in mind, then I don't need it. Now, of course, there are certain situations in life where you just got to do what you got to do. I'm not being insensitive to that. But overall, a lot more of those decisions have to do with the choice you make based on the parameters you put in place initially or the lack thereof than you just having to do what you got to do. Too often we're putting ourselves in situations where we just got to do what we got to do instead of making provision for us to do what we want to do. The second thing I mentioned other than the obituary was my value ladder. This is literally just my prioritized values of what matters the absolute most in my life. I have 9 pieces to this, and this is in order from the most important to the least important out of my values. That is faith, family, growth and development, impact and influence, freedom, finances, fitness, friends, and fun. If something does not align with any of those 9 values, I don't need it. And I'm better able to determine what decisions to make in the moment based on where it ranks in my value ladder. If some crisis happens in my family, yet I had some type of business opportunity planned, of course, the family is going to override whatever, because I already know that family is higher on my ladder than finances. Let's do something that is a little bit more gray, right? Let's say that I know that I work out at this point in the evening every single day, yet my friends want to go out to the sports bar and hang out. Which one am I going to choose? I don't have to waste brain energy on making this decision because I have already predetermined what my value ladder is. Fitness is above friends on my value ladder. I'm not going to skip this workout because my friends want to hang out. I will go after I work out, or I'll make adjustments around my workout, but I feel like my health is more important than arbitrary outings. Now, I might change this value system as I get older. Who knows? I might start valuing spending time with people more than I do my health. I don't know, but I have to determine what that is for me in this moment beforehand so that I'm not wasting energy in the moment trying to make decisions and then possibly making decisions that actually don't align with what I care about. And then I feel frustrated, stressed out, or depressed with my decisions because they were misaligned with my internal compass. You keep indifference at bay when you know where you're trying to go, when you have the end in mind. Know what you want to be said about you when it's all said and done. And know what values you have so that you can make decisions accordingly and you no longer find yourself indifferent in situations. Okay, so the first thing we avoid is indifference, and I just shared how to do that. The second thing we need to avoid is ignorance, right? The lack of knowledge. Now, ignorance is so interesting because this is where, now the law of polarity applies to everything, but I'm especially going to point it out in this situation. That law just means that there's two sides to everything, right? There's no such thing as a one-sided piece of paper. There's no such thing as a one-sided pancake. There's no such thing as a one-sided coin, right? Everything has two sides to it, not just physical things, but also intangible things. There is good and bad, hot and cold, holy and evil in all types of situations. So this also applies to ignorance. Lots of times when you think of ignorance, you think of a lack of knowledge, right? You thinking that you know it all, so therefore you don't realize what you don't know and you walk around in ignorance. And that is very true, and that's what this is alluding to as well. But there's also another side to this that I do want to point out that I feel like isn't talked about as much. And this is thinking or assuming of yourself that you don't know enough when you actually do. And the funny thing is, I see this more with visionaries and leaders than with any other group. And the funny thing about it is that those are usually the most qualified people to be doing what they're doing. It's really weird, but that's just how it is. It's usually the people that have not poured into themselves at all, have not developed any type of intelligence in any area for years, that feel like they're unstoppable and can conquer the world. It's really crazy. I don't understand it, but that's just how it works, right? I guess it's because when you're a visionary and when you're a leader, you're constantly pursuing knowledge. So therefore, you're constantly reminded of how much you don't know. But either way, both situations are bad and lead to average and do not lead to excellence. So how do we avoid this? You avoid ignorance by setting public deadlines and or getting a coach. So setting public deadlines forces you to figure stuff out, man. This works on both sides, right? So let's just say I do this all the time now, man. All the time. I set public deadlines when I do not have everything and I know I'm lacking in areas, and I do it anyway, because if I try to get everything right, I just know I would never do it. So when setting public deadlines, either I know I don't know enough, and now since I've set the public deadline and I'm held accountable by the public, I have to figure it out, and I do figure it out because I'm an intelligent person and you are an intelligent person, probably even more intelligent than me. And you will figure it out as well, probably even faster than me, but you will figure it out. On the other end, if you don't realize how much knowledge you're lacking and you're just walking around in boastful ignorance because you think you know enough, when you actually go to execute the thing, you will realize how much you don't know. You're like, oh, snap. I actually don't know how to do this, or this is not working the way I thought it was going to work. I need to acquire more knowledge so that I don't look like a fool. Either way, setting those public deadlines straightens you up real quick. The second component of avoiding ignorance is getting a coach. Getting a coach helps you know what you don't know and holds you accountable for knowing it. Look, there's just some things that you just don't know that you don't know. And that's what coaches are for. They make you aware of your blind spots. They teach you things that you might not be able to see in the picture because you are within the frame. And you got to get somebody who's outside of the frame to point out those things so that you can improve. This is why Tiger Woods still has a golf coach or a swing coach. This is why Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan had a trainer and a coach. This is why people like Jennifer Hudson and Ariana Grande and John Legend still have vocal coaches, because they know that there's always going to be a space of ignorance in their ability. And they need someone outside the frame. That doesn't even mean someone that's necessarily better than them at what they do. But they need someone outside the frame who is knowledgeable to point out things that they can't see. Now, you might be saying to yourself, Clee, I get it, but how the heck do I even find a coach, man? It's actually not that hard. I mean, you've used YouTube before. You've searched podcasts before. You found this one. You've used Google before. Literally, that's how I found pretty much all my coaches. I have a personal growth coach. I have a business coach. I have a podcasting coach. Yes, I do. How did I find these people? I'm pretty sure it was just YouTube and Google, like me either stumbling across someone who was in a field that I was already pursuing knowledge in, and I went down a rabbit hole and was like, oh, snap, I need to learn from this person. Or I was specifically Googling for an answer. This person gave it to me, and I found out they had a lot more to offer, and I went under their tutelage. Like, you just got to be intentional to find it. And it doesn't happen immediately. It takes a little time. But like I said earlier, when you're passionate about something, hard work with a desirable outcome is called passion. If you're indifferent about whatever you're pursuing, yeah, it's going to be stressful when you don't find that person right away, because you're not in the passionate space in your life. There's a second component to this that I will also address, but before that, I'll address another thing that you might be thinking that will also be covered in this answer. And that is, but Cleve, what if I can't afford a coach? I get it. I know for me, in certain spaces, I definitely wasn't able to afford a coach because coaches, for the most part, are expensive. And if they're not expensive, I wouldn't get them because that's a red flag. That if they don't value their expertise at a high level, you might get a good coach, but most of the time they're going to be crappy. So that's just a word of advice. I know for my first business coach investment, I emptied my savings account. Like literally, I had thousands of dollars saved up in that account from working my job, and I spent the whole thing. I think it was honestly God, because I had the exact amount in there that I needed to get the coach. Was it worth it? Yes. Tenfold yes. I did not know how much I didn't know, bro. Like, I didn't know anything about business. I mean, nothing. I realized once I started getting coached. Sometimes you have to make those financial sacrifices. There was another coach that I got where I did have to put it on a credit card because I didn't have the funds at the time. Was it worth it? Actually, what I went in there for and thought I was going to get, I actually really didn't get what I thought I was going to get. I got something completely different, which was even more valuable than what I originally went in there for the coaching for. Crazy, right? But you got to invest in yourself. Now, I know you might not have the financial means right now. That doesn't mean that you cannot get coaching. You could get coaching directly, or you could get coaching indirectly. I get coached indirectly by hundreds of people by reading books, taking courses, going to masterminds and conferences, YouTube, blogs, podcasts. This is all indirect coaching where you are gleaning knowledge from people who have done something that you have not done yet and therefore can point out the blind spots that you have not been able to identify in your life. You just have to want the knowledge. This episode is made in partnership with Audible. I love Audible. I mean, look, people say, Cleavon, man, you like to read and all that stuff. No, I do not. I do not like to read. I like to learn. There is a difference. In fact, I'm a super, super slow reader. Like, it takes me forever to read anything. People be telling me to read the captions on their posts, and I be struggling to do it so I don't look silly taking so long. That's how bad I am at reading and comprehending. But when I do an Audible, I just listen to the book. Then if I like the book, I actually buy the hard copy of the book or the ebook version of the book. Then I listen and read the book so I can comprehend it even more. Then I read it again while taking notes, so then I can actually apply the information to my life and benefit the results of reading the book. But it wouldn't happen None of that would happen if I didn't listen to the audiobook on Audible. I love Audible. And if you're listening to this podcast, you can get a 30-day free trial by clicking the link in my show notes. Look, you even get a free audiobook in the trial. You're welcome. Slow readers unite. Let's get back to the episode. All right, so we avoid indifference by keeping the end in mind. We avoid ignorance by setting public deadlines and or getting a coach. The next one is inflexibility. How do we avoid inflexibility? We avoid inflexibility by surrounding ourselves with people who have growth mindsets and keeping a fluid calendar. I'm going to say this slowly. Community. Community. Community, 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 community. Ooh, say that 3 times fast. Community, 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 community. I can't say it 3 times fast. Community, man. Why do you think I started the Build Your Vision World Changers Community Facebook page? Because the importance of community is so underrated. You become who you surround yourself with. So if you are surrounding yourself with rigid people, you are going to be rigid as well. If you are surrounding yourself with inflexible, immalleable, fixed mindset people, you are going to have that same type of paradigm about the world. We are all highly influential individuals, not just influencing others, but being influenced. Now, I'm not going to be one of those guys, oh, you got to cut everybody off. You got to cut this off. You got to cut that person off. No, you just have to compartmentalize and align yourself properly in your relationships. Look, you can have groups of friends that are great to hang out with, groups of people that are great to kick it with, great to be emotionally vulnerable with. But that may not be the group of people that's going to get you to your vision, that's going to help you accomplish your goals, that's going to help you build. You have to surround yourself with like-minded people that are going to help you get where you want to go because they're also on the same journey or have done the journey already. You got to surround yourself with people with growth mindsets that are flexible, that their mindsets are expansive to growth, to striving for excellence. If you do not do that, you will be imprisoning yourself in average, because either you will be surrounded by people that have accepted average as normal, or you will be in isolation, and nothing done in isolation is sustainable for a long period of time. You'll eventually burn out and tap out. You got to get community. So if you're listening to this and you're not in the Build Your Vision World Changers Facebook group, it's free, bruh. Honestly, what are you doing? Get in there. The link is in the show notes. So community of growth-minded people will eradicate inflexibility in your life. The second thing is you got to create margin. Now, this is maybe a slightly countercultural, but I think it's starting to gain some steam finally because this hustle culture thing, right? Entrepreneurship is super in vogue right now. Hustle, grind, get the bag, secure the bag, move in silence, whatever this whole stupidness is really prevalent in our culture right now. It's super common and sometimes admirable to say, oh, I've been so busy. I'm so busy. You might be busy, but are you productive? Are you effective? Are you efficient? I want to be the type of person that gets a lot done without having to do a lot, right? I want to be able to spend my day golfing because I am so efficient that I'm making twice as much money doing half the work. Or let's not even say twice as much the money, right? Twice as much peace doing half the work. Ooh, yeah, let that marinate. Because the reward of being busy or being needed or being all over the place is tiring. And you become inflexible in things that you do need flexibility for. Life is unpredictable. The most predictable thing about life is that it's going to be unpredictable. You need margin. You constantly find yourself in cycles of being frustrated with your discipline and consistency because you're not leaving room for margin. Life be lifing, bruh. This is why I promote and use in my own life the visionary planning system in the Build Your Vision Planner. I did a whole challenge explaining this last year. I'm going to be doing some other stuff this year explaining it. There's an ebook that explains it already. If you want to go find it, I'll put it in the show notes or something like that. Just check it out to see what I'm talking about. But this creates margin in your life. It simplifies your day. This is why I said that avoiding average actually makes your life so much more simple. You only got to accomplish one thing that day. You have one objective. You only have 3 tasks that are major that determine whether that day is a success or not. You are creating margin so that if you don't do your 13, 20, 28-point bullet to-do list, you're not a failure. right? That's just not even realistic. I don't know why people do that. You don't have to do that. You have to organize your day by putting margin in your life. Go check out the ebook. It's called The Key to Consistency. I might change that title later, but nonetheless, the link will be in the show notes forever. I'll just change the title when I change the title. All right, so we avoid indifference by keeping the end in mind. We avoid ignorance by setting public deadlines and or getting a coach. We avoid inflexibility by surrounding ourselves with people who have growth mindsets and keeping a fluid, flexible calendar. The next one is miscommunication. Now, this is another situation where the law of polarity is very prevalent. There's two sides to every coin on this, right? There's miscommunication externally, but there's also what we don't talk about as much is miscommunication internally. You avoid miscommunication by getting clear on your life contracts. I also talk about this in the Key to Consistency ebook. If you want super in-depth with me speaking about it, I do talk about this in the You Inc. series in season 4 of the show. I don't remember what episode numbers they are, but I think they're like in the low hundreds or something like that, maybe starting around episode 109. This is establishing your why, your vision, and your mission for your life. The why is the purpose for your dream. Your vision is the painted picture of your dream. Your mission is the plan for your dream. You have to be clear about these things. If you are not clear, you will inevitably have lack of clarity internally and miscommunicate internally, and that will definitely be reflected externally when you're communicating with others. One of the hardest things as a visionary is having to explain what you do. It's so hard, bruh, especially when you're in the building process, right? People be like, hey, what you up to these days? You're like, I'm working on this project where basically it's so awkward, bruh. It's so awkward. But I know for a fact, if you are not clear internally, you will definitely be super unclear and embarrassed externally. Now, once you are clear internally on why you do what you do, the painted picture of what you're trying to produce in your life, and the mission and plan for how you're going to get there, even if you're not able to super clearly articulate that to the external public, you will at least have the self-assurance that you know what you're doing, even if they don't understand what you're doing yet. That is super important, because the worst type of feeling to have when you're trying to build something of impact, of influence, that is going to help and serve people and also serve you and your family for generations to come, is to be misunderstood by the public and then also not understand yourself at home. It is the worst feeling. You just feel lost. You feel unclear. You feel confused. You feel like you're in limbo. You gotta get clear. You gotta avoid miscommunication, especially internally. And over time, as you reiterate what your why, what's your vision, what's your mission, what your premise is, and I talk about this in the You Inc. series, you will get better at expressing and communicating externally over time. I struggled with this for a long time, and I'm still perfecting this as I continue in my Build Your Vision journey. No longer trying to seek the approval of others when they ask what I'm up to. Being assured with who I am and what I'm building and what God has called me to produce in this life. And I go from saying, well, I used to be a radio producer and now I'm kind of doing like this podcast production agency thing and sounding real unconfident and unconvincing, to saying, hey, you know how a lot of young people usually when they leave school or in school still don't have a lot of clarity on what they want to do and how they want to build the life that they want? Well, yeah, so I teach personal and professional growth via podcasting through my company called Build Your Vision. Yeah, we help young visionaries build a life and business that they're proud of. I walk them through my 4-step Build Your Vision framework. We help them create transformational podcasts so they're not only able to impact others with their shows, but also impact and excel their own lives so that they can have more influence, impact, and income in the world that they desire. Yeah, I know, it's really cool, right? I even have a podcast. It's called Build Your Vision. Here's the link. Check it out. Wow, that sounds a lot more compelling and confident, right? Did that happen overnight? No, that probably happened last night. I'm reiterating that pitch. I'm reiterating how I share what I do and what God has called me to with other people all the time. You're going to have to keep doing that. But it started with me getting super clear on who I was, who my creator was, and who I was called to serve. You got to do that internal work to avoid miscommunication, not just externally, but internally as well. And I know you could do it. You just got to take the time. All right, so we avoid indifference by keeping the end in mind. We avoid ignorance by setting public deadlines and or getting a coach. We avoid inflexibility by surrounding ourselves with people who have growth mindsets and keeping a fluid calendar. We avoid miscommunication by getting clear on our life contracts, our why, our vision, our mission. And lastly, we avoid posing by sharing our vision with the right people. Right, so we established in part 1 of this Allergic to Average series, right, that posing is putting up a facade that you are accomplishing what you really aren't accomplishing in life, right? Not taking ownership over what you have not done. Or possibly, we talked about this in one of the Vision Coffee episodes on my Instagram Live, possibly not taking ownership of what you have done either, and which is why the word posing is inside of imposter syndrome, right? That was a whole nother story. I did an IG Live with Ashley Daniels. She's amazing. Go check it out on my IG at Clee the Visionary if you're not following me already. But essentially, posing is putting out to the world something that actually isn't accurate. Why do we do this, right? It's because being different or being in a state of building is not always readily approved or affirmed. Sometimes it makes us feel better when we act like we are accomplishing something that we aren't, or that we could put excuses in front of why we haven't accomplished what we want to truly yet, or by just saying that we are content with something that we actually aren't content with, because owning up to the fact that you're still building and you're still on the journey and you're still figuring out can be kind of embarrassing sometimes if we are not self-assured in what God has called us to and have true confidence in his timing. Or you simply lack confidence because you have not shown up for yourself and you lack consistency. Either way, posing is really easy to do, especially with the world we live in on the internet, especially with social media. I mean, essentially, that's just a posing network. So we avoid this by being calculated and careful with who we share our vision with. The bottom line is your vision isn't for everybody. If you want to read a story that exemplifies this, just read the story of Joseph in Genesis. I believe the story is between chapter 37 of Genesis and chapter 42, where this guy has a dream. He shares it with his brothers. His brothers ended up trying to kill him and put him into slavery. And in the end, it all worked out for the good of Joseph, and he actually ended up saving his family from starvation. It's a great story, but Joseph was not calculated with who he shared his dream with, and it got him into a lot of trouble. So who is the right type of person to share your vision with? This person must be, number one, growth-minded. You cannot share an expansive vision with a constricted mind. It just don't work, bro. They're either going to put a cap on you or you're going to get frustrated and bust a cap in them. I did not plan to say that. Oh, shoot. All right, let's get back to the script. The second thing that a person that you can share a vision with must have is they do not seek your approval, or they do not seek the approval of anyone except God. Why is this important? Because you need to have somebody who is not saying things in order to acquiesce to what might make you happy or what might make you comfortable. Visions can be refined and sharpened by putting them in the council of people who actually are trying to make you better and would rather see you improve than get your approval. The third thing they need to have is to have your best interests at heart. Even if it is not advantageous for them, will they still put your excellence, your acceleration in life ahead of theirs because they actually value you that much and they genuinely want to see you win? And the last thing is, this person has to be admirable. Now, what do I mean when I say this? You have to, in some regard, right, and most likely the regard that you are sharing your vision with them, that aspect of life, you have to admire them. And I feel like we've all been guilty of this at some point, where you get an accountability partner, right? Like, okay, we're both overweight, right? We're going to keep each other accountable. Why in the world would you get somebody who's just as fat as you be accountable for you? Like, it actually doesn't make sense, right? Oh, I'm going to start showing up to the gym, so I'm going to go to somebody. I'm going to make sure that I do it with somebody who also never goes to the gym. Like, what? And here's why it's important. It's not necessarily because you guys can't help each other improve and be supportive to each other. That's not true. You absolutely can be. But here's the thing. What happens when you fall short? Which you will. It's not if, but when. The weight of the opinion of your accountability differs on how much you admire them, right? Oh, bro, I didn't show up to the gym today. Oh, word, me either. like it's not going to be that bad. Like, you telling me that, oh, I need to come to the gym. It's like, well, you make sure you go to the gym, bro. We're in the same situation. Rather than if I'm like working with somebody who I really admire, they're super fit, and then I tell them I wasn't able to make it to the gym, their disappointment in me is not going to be the same as this person who is in the same situation as me disappointment in me, because I know that they have gone through the same journey I'm going through and they persevered through it and were successful. That weighs more because I admire what they went through and what they have accomplished, and therefore their disappointment in me shows to me that I have not had the same type of grit, grind, and perseverance that they had, and it makes me want to show up more. Is this making sense? You have to admire this person. And now you don't have to admire this person in every aspect, but especially if you are sharing a vision with somebody who has already had some type of experience in the area that your vision exists in. You really do have to admire that person in that area of their life. Now, it's great if you just admire that person overall. That's also good. But if you don't, just make sure you admire that person in the area that you're talking to them about this thing about. All right. So there you have it. That is how you avoid average and maintain excellence. Avoid indifference by keeping the end in mind. Avoid ignorance by setting public deadlines or getting a coach. Avoid inflexibility by surrounding yourself with people who have growth mindsets and keeping a fluid calendar. Avoid miscommunication by getting clear on your life contracts, your why, your vision, your mission. And avoid posing by being intentional about sharing your vision with the right people. Now, I know this probably sounds like a lot of work. And I know I said in the beginning of this episode that this was easy and made my life simpler. And trust me, guys, it's actually not as hard as it sounds if you just put your mind to do it. Like, actually just try to execute on it. And it also isn't as hard as it sounds when you actually care about the outcome and you are passionate about what you are trying to achieve in your life. And I know you're already about that life because you're a visionary, and only visionaries listen to this show. But here's the most important thing. Things get so much simpler once you put in that work. You can either work a little now and work hard later, or work hard now and work a little later. I'm definitely the type of person that likes to go for the long term. It saves you so much stress in the long haul. Once you have this stuff down and you have implemented it into your life, life gets a lot simpler, like a lot simpler. And guys, I'm actually super excited to share this new feature of the Build Your Vision podcast called voice messaging. So if you have a question about today's episode or any episode that you have listened to up to this point, please feel free to leave me a voice message on my podcast website. All you got to do is click the blue tab on the right side of the screen when you go to blog.buildyourvision.co. That's blog.buildyourvision.co. Or depending on when you're listening to this, it might be buildyourvision.co/podcast. Either way, the link is going to be in the show notes. Send me a voice message. I'll be able to answer your question, and I really look forward to hearing from you. And that is also why we have the Build Your Vision World Changers Community Facebook group. You want to get in there, ask questions, bounce ideas off of people. It's free. The link is also in the show notes. In the spirit of feedback, since we're here, hey, if you like this podcast or this episode or want to see it improve in some type of way, please leave a review and rating on Apple Podcasts. It increases the credibility of the show while also helping us know what you like and some things that you think we can improve on to make the show more valuable for you and anybody else that comes in contact with the show. I really want this to become a community and that this is not just a one-to-many platform. This is a back and forth dialogue. You can leave a voice message, you can get in the Facebook group, and you can leave a rating and review. I want to communicate with you because I value you, and I know that you are very smart and intelligent and can help me improve in so many ways. I hope you were blessed by this episode. I will see you in the next one, but as always, keep building your vision every single day. Peace.
Executive production by Cleavon Davis. Music production by Cleavon Davis and Christian Hernandez. The Build Your Vision podcast is a product of Build Your Vision LLC.